Hello, Astrotometry. I just got a message from Gerstner's about a gentleman by the name of Lowell Whiteside. And I've never heard of Lowell Whiteside before, Gerstner's. Thanks for the note, though. Thanks for the message and giving me a heads up on this. It looks really interesting. I found some stuff on about.com. I'll link it in the comments. This is not my official stance on his work. I think that it is very possible that earthquakes and different types of impacts send ripples through time-space, in a sense. I think that's very possible, and I think that our understanding of that is definitely developing. I have not encountered any models other than the one that I am working with that accurately, I think, represent the landscape, shall we say. If you look at the chronocentric model and you look at the correlation that I've drawn between the hypertime shadow of the earthquake, in other words, when the Earth quakes, when the Earth moves, when there's a sudden shift in the Earth in the mass on the Earth, that is reflected in the Earth's orbit itself around the Sun. So there's a shadow that forms on the Sun from it. It's a foreshadow. It happens before the earthquake. And there are earthquakes before the shadow, there are earthquakes before the solar wind arrives from the coronal hole, and there are earthquakes after, like right after. So there's the temporal relationship. I'm not talking about cause and effect here. I'm talking about a supersymmetrical relationship that exists in time-space. And so this is a completely different model. In astrotometry, the Earth doesn't exist without the rest of the space around it. In astrotometry, the Earth is dependent on all of the energy waveforms that come in from outer space. And the reason that most of it is dark is because most of it doesn't relate to anything that we have developed to perceive that energy that's out there. In other words, the blackness that we see in outer space is likely the dark energy that produces the lower, the underground components of our matter. In other words, they're higher energy forms that just move right through us, that are responsible for the materialization and rematerialization of the matter and energy forms that persist on the Earth. And that word persist is the most important thing there, because what happens is when something shifts, or whichever way you want to look at it, whether it happens up there or whether it happens down here, it's phase locked. The concept is that it's created on a common carrier wave that is emanating from somewhere else. I mean, I don't know yet where to call the place that it's coming from. I mean, the obvious possibilities are the center of the Earth, or the center of the Sun, or the center of the universe. Those are the obvious ones. Where is it really coming from? I haven't determined that yet. But there is this relationship that I have identified that is part of the hypertime shadow that is consistent with the concept of the chronocentric model that manifests as a hole in the solar corona. Now, what that means is there's a higher energy X-ray picture that you can take of the Sun, and you can take it in different wavelengths. And this is part of the SOHO project. And if you look at the wavelengths and the hole, that hole forms right before the earthquake. And then when the solar wind arrives, right before the solar wind arrives, there's an earthquake, or series of earthquakes, depending on how big it is. It's proportional to the size of the hole. And then there's a flurry of earthquakes, and then when the wind ends from the coronal hole, after it's closed up, there's another series of usually pretty large earthquakes. So that's the pattern that I've noticed. But the details of why that is in astrotometry is fairly clear. The X-rays would be associated with the things that are under the ground because they're penetrative. And so the X-rays are a clue of what those higher energy forms are doing and when there's a disturbance in them. Because in astrotometry, the sun represents a time displaced version of the Earth, possibly 180 degrees or 180 days before and 180 days after. In other words, the symmetry that we see in the stars is related to the changes that happen on the Earth over the course of a year. And so so this is a model. This is a model that is going to be very, 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 very useful. This is going to be something that we can really use to flesh out the details about these things. The idea that time waves leaked into the past and future, I think that's definitely possible. When you think about the nature of electromagnetism and the fact that electromagnetic energy propagates, theoretically it goes into space, and theoretically it comes back. If you pay attention to what I've said about the nature of the curvature of space-time, or even if you just consider the nature of the Earth's own magnetic field, any moving electrical particle it has a force exerted on it when it moves through a magnetic field, and so there's a natural curvature. This is how the CRT was created. This is how a cyclotron works. And this is just a property of nature. It's a property of electromagnetism, and these things spiral and spin all the time. And that might return. That there might be an echo, a time echo of an electromagnetic event. I'm sure it's true. I'm sure that's possible. But for us to figure out what those correlative observations are, to be able to observe what the correlation criteria is, that's very tricky. And what I've done with the hurricane prediction, you might want to look at that one. That's pretty strong. That's pretty sturdy. If you look at the hurricanes that form on the Earth, there is a correlation between the hurricanes and the coronal mass ejections, between the cyclonic storms and the coronal mass ejections. I noticed that he has a website, geoforecaster.com. And about.com didn't give it a very good review, and I don't understand exactly what he's using to predict, but I haven't networked with anyone. I've really been kind of just like walling myself off, and part of the reason is I don't want to. I've kind of wanted to make it sort of a pure science, and I've kind of wanted to keep it strictly based on what I see as what is true. And so there's a lot of issues that come in there. There's a guy that posted a video here on YouTube that was claiming that the earthquake in the Sichuan province was caused by the HARP project, and that earthquakes in Japan had been caused by the HARP project. And I posted a very good video debunking what he had said about that. I got ripped by people here on YouTube that tried to say that I was a disinformation agent because I was standing up for what's true. And that's really sad. I really wish that we lived in a culture where we didn't have to worry about whether or not the government is lying to us about stuff. I mean, I really wish we did. And I wish we lived in a world where, these people that we pay to protect us, theoretically, and to advance our understanding of things, didn't sabotage those things.